Hey guys, how's it going? This is Mr. Habanero coming to you with a different kind of video today. So I'm kind of like not feeling too fantastic. So normally I would be streaming today, but I kind of decided to change it up. I didn't want to be sitting in front of an audience for 2 hours or so streaming. Simply because my stomach's giving me a bad time today. But that's, you know what? That's kind of beside the point. I thought it'd be really interesting to kind of try a different type of video, and I told you guys that I'm going to be experimenting with different kinds of videos lately. And this was one that just kind of popped into my head within the last like few hours or so. Basically, last night I decided, I don't know if you guys know or not, I'm a pretty avid anime watcher. I watch different kinds of anime. I mean, avid. Uh, I get in the mood for watching animes, and so I do that. And so I was really bored last night, and I just kind of had this like mood that came upon me where I was like, you know what? I want to watch a good and interesting new fantasy isekai anime. So I was kind of looking around. I went ahead and looked up, like, I went through the category of fantasy, and I was like, okay, anything that kind of stands out and sounds interesting, I'll just go ahead and click it. I won't watch any reviews on it or whatever. I'll just kind of like check it out and see what it is. While looking around, I stumbled upon this anime called BOFURI, 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 and its full title is BOFURI. I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense. And I was like, okay, like, sure, all right. So what are we doing here? We're doing a story about a weird little character who decides to kind of become highly defensive and unkillable. And I was like, okay, well, I've kind of seen some, anime, fantasy based animes that do that kind of thing. Like, there's the really good one, like Rise of the Shield Hero, and which is amazing. If you guys have never seen Rise of the Shield Hero, that's an amazing anime. Highly recommend it. I also thought of, I think there was one that was like, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but it was something like this guy is overly cautious, like he's way OP, but he's super overly cautious or something. Not sure I can remember exactly what it's called, but and that was really entertaining too. I mean, it wasn't fantastic, like it wasn't like Shield Hero amazing, but it was pretty good, and it kind of had the same idea where it was like, oh, like there's this guy who's like really weird and does these weird eccentric things because he's trying to be extra safe. Um, so this title, Bofuri, I don't want to get hurt, so I'll max out my defense. Kind of like clicked, the title just kind of clicked with me, and I was like, all right, I'm down to check this out. Like, let's see how it turns out. Um, I binge watched it because I'm an anime binge watcher. I binge watched the whole anime in like one night, which is probably not. I don't know if that's considered a healthy action or not. I don't know. I mean, I used to be a person who used to keep up with anime weekly and stuff like that when I was younger, but I don't really like doing that anymore. I kind of just like to binge watch at my own pace now. So I binge watched this Bofurry, and I liked it. Like I started watching it and I was like, this is really cute. Like it's kind of this story about this girl who starts playing a virtual reality video game or whatever, and it was just super cute. Like it was just like it wasn't like an isekai in the sense of like, oh, I'm teleported to like another world, or I'm dead and now I'm restarting my life in this fantasy world. It was definitely not like that. It was just straight up like, this is a girl and she's playing a video game and this is the character she plays in this video game. And I was like, okay, sure, whatever. It's still got fantasy elements. I mean, I get the whole thing that it's, in a virtual world or whatever. But I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. I can get down with this. This is fine. And the whole thing is like, by the way, this is going to be full of spoilers, guys. I'm just going to be straight up about it. I'll make sure to kind of put a warning in the title or something. But basically this girl, her best friend gets her into this video game, and she's like, cool, I'll play this video game, but she doesn't know what she's doing, so she decides to put all of her points into defense because she doesn't want to like die. And I was like, okay, that's kind of cute, you know. Like it kind of like weirdly reminded me of like times when I've played video games. Like there was a game I played a long time ago where I kind of like would play unpopular builds that were not ideally designed for playing that way, and but they were it was still fun, you know. So it kind of like took me back to that like place of doing that, and it was just fun because like the characters were just cute, and it didn't have like any kind of romance in it or anything, and it was just kind like I feel like a lot of isekai animes have like are very romance centered stories, and this was had no romance in it at all, like not even slightly. It was just a girl having a good time, and I thought that was kind of cool and charming when I first started watching it. And they were doing the stereotypical thing that a lot of these isekai animes do, which is like, oh, like she's secretly overpowered and it's totally unintentional, and like which was kind of like, you know, and there's animes that I watch that like that's fun, you know, that can be pretty fun. And so that's kind of the route they were going down. And what I also liked was that like she unintentionally became overpowered. But what started to be fun about it was that the game that she was playing actually reacted to that, which was cool. They had this whole kind of backstory of these developers of the game that were like watching over her. They were watching over everybody. That was kind of the idea. But they were watching over her and realized that she was doing all this overpowered stuff. So they would nerf the game so that she wouldn't be so powerful. And I was like, that's cool. Like I like that. And then she would like find new ways to be overpowered. And I was like, this is kind of cool. You know, that way it's not like she's constantly like, yes, she's overpowered in the storyline, but it's not a situation where she, you know, the story isn't adapting to how overpowered she is. Like they're constantly like I said, the game developers were like, we need to change the game so that she's not overpowered. And I was like, I like that. You know, it kind of gives it like this sense of balance and doesn't make it feel like that, you know, it gets boring and out of control. Or so I thought. So I was watching it for a while, and it was very fun and charming and silly, and I was enjoying it. And they kind of went through this whole thing of like they kept adding new characters, and like the new characters that they would add in were kind of overpowered in their own kind of unique ways, and they were also eccentric players in the sense of like they weren't playing these idealized builds that the game intended for, and they were kind of like these eccentric builds that the idea was that people would not build that, but then they unintentionally became overpowered because they were quote unquote eccentric builds. Now, what started to happen is that as they added these new characters, like these new characters in the storyline that were also eccentric players with overpowered builds, they start like making it so that, well, you know, if we have these eccentric characters in addition to our main character who's already overpowered, and these characters are overpowered, we need to make our overpowered character more obnoxiously overpowered so that that way these other characters that are also overpowered don't seem overpowered to the degree that the main character is supposed to be overpowered. And like I get it. Like I get what they were trying to do. Like but it got so out of control, you guys. It was so out of control. It got to a point of where like I got about halfway through the show, and like and the first half of the show like I wholeheartedly enjoyed. Like it was fun. Like it was charming, it was cute, it was silly. Like I didn't mind that the main character was overpowered, especially considering that they were doing things to like actively nerf her, you know, like make her less overpowered. And I was like, okay, like cool. They're trying, you know, they're trying to like do this whole thing where she's not stupid, obnoxious, broken, overpowered or anything. But then like they decided to throw that to the side and just be like, nah, she's just the best and nothing can stop her and there's no stakes, and like just she's just broken, and there's nothing to do about it. And like it got so boring so fast, you guys. It got so boring so quickly. And like I like quickly like at once I got into the next like the second half of the show, I just was so disillusioned by it. It wasn't even fun. Like it was like because you knew that like any person that she came up against was going to be defeated by her all the time, no matter what. Like so and then they started doing these things where they were one upping each like overpowered mechanic that she discovered to a point of where it was absurd. Like the absurdity behind it was just not it was like it got to a point of where I was laughing while watching the show, but for all the wrong reasons, you know? Like like I said, spoilers, guys. There's a point where she gets into the like where she basically unlocks a power. Like, and the whole thing that they go with, they also start violating their own character, like the design of the character. So like they have like all these limitations where she's like, oh, she's defensive only, so she has no attack stats and she can't move fast and blah 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 blah. And I was like, I like that. You're nerfing her. You know, you're making her less powerful. You're saying you can be this powerful, but there's all these barricades that you have to deal with for being very powerful in that one way. But then they start like taking those nerfs away from her and just making her way too broken, overpowered. So like they start like they at first come up with creative ways to do it. Like for example, she gets like a skill that allows her to like teleport to people, but it's like reasonable how the teleporting works. So it's not broken. So like even though she's like crazy slow, she can just like teleport and it's not ludicrous. Like you can understand what the idea is. In fact, actually, the idea that they went with was part of a game mechanic in a video game that I actually played once, where you would have like a defensive character who did a move called cover. And what cover would do is no matter where you would pick a person, like in your party, and then if they were to take damage, your defensive character would immediately teleport to wherever that other character is and then receive the damage instead of the character that you're protecting. And that's what they did for the teleporting mechanic that she had to make up for the fact that she couldn't move quickly. And I was like, okay, like, you know, I've literally seen that in a video game before. So, and this is a video game world. So, yeah, that's a creative way to overcome the fact that she's weak in this aspect. But when I started getting upset was they then started adding these things where, and like I said, I kind of got distracted with what I was saying with the spoiler, which is there's a point where she like unlocks a power that like she's not supposed to be strong in attacking. She's not supposed to be able to move fast. She's like terrible at everything except for survivability. And then suddenly she fights a boss and then unlocks this power that allows her to transform into a gigantic like Godzilla style monster and just like kill everything, and she can eat everything and like murder everything and like not care. And then they're like, oh, it's okay, we nerfed her because she can only do it once per day. But then like she like transforms into that monster and then she could just stay that way all day. So like, you know, the nerf of only using it once a day, it's like, well, but then she could just be a monster all day and kill everything in sight. Like, what's the point? So, like, they get to that point in the story, and I'm just like, why bother? Like, why would you even bother with the whole defensive thing? You know, like, why would you bother with, you know, creating these limitations for this overpowered character that you've created when you're just going to throw it all to the wind and just say, oh, screw it, she's a monster now. She can kill anything and defeat anything and be the best at anything. And I was like, at that point, like, I was like, all right, guys, like, cool, like, you're totally ruining the integrity of the intrigue of this character you've created. And it was cute and it was fun at first, and like it was creative, like with what you were trying to do, and even like nerfing her in a reasonable way, which was fun and interesting. And now you're just throwing it all caution to the wind. You don't care anymore. You're just turning her into a monster that can do anything. Like you clearly don't care. So, but I was like, whatever, like, fine, it's fine, just keep going, like, we'll see what happens, like, it can't be that bad, right? It can't be that terrible, like, sure, whatever. Like maybe they'll come up with a nerf as the show goes on to like prevent her from taking way too much advantage of that. It got worse. Like it got way worse. And here's let me kind of explain something to you guys. If you're going to write a good fantasy story, like, and the thing is too is that like yes, this is a storyline where a girl is playing a video game. And like, you know, there it's a video game, you know, whatever. But the thing is like they established in the story and the game that this is like a fantasy world with like magic and they kind of like introduced like some steampunky kind of stuff, but it wasn't like, you know, like well, I mean that's not true. They did have flying machines, but they didn't have like, you know, like flying cars and jets everywhere and like lasers and cannons and guns and blah 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 blah. They didn't do that. Like they were like, this is a fantasy game. Like there's magic and there's, you know, you can like make little machines that do weird things, but they're more steampunky rather than like futuristic technology, right? So like they kind of like really established that as like an overall setting, and that was kind of nice. In fact, that was the reason why I was watching it. I liked the fantasy aspect to it, even though it's a video game, you know, right? So they then get to this point that is just the most abhorrent thing they had done in the whole anime. It was awful. It was just awful. She gains a skill from fighting a boss that allows her to become a laser firing robot mech. Like being a giant Godzilla monster was apparently not enough. Now she has to be like a gigantic fucking robot mech. Like why? And like she's got like cannons and lasers and she can fly and shoot bombs, and it's like, what was even the point of the story you were telling? You know, like you had this really interesting character who was cute and adorable and fun and interesting, and like yes, she was overpowered with like not being able to die, but she had these limitations and all these interesting things about her, and like it was fun. And now like it just didn't matter. Like it just didn't matter anymore, because now she's just a flying laser shooting robot woman. Like it was so stupid. It was so freaking stupid. It was the most annoying, like and I was like so mentally checked out at that point. I was like, I mean, and the problem is that by the time you get to that point in the story, because like I said, the first half of the anime is great. It's so good. Like I would say like definitely like the first like, I don't know, like 6 or 7 episodes or so are like really fun and entertaining and charming and interesting and like good. It's good. And like here's the thing, like, you know, like I have a rule about anime where it's like, well, any show actually, any TV show or anime or whatever, is that like if you can entertain me 3 episodes in a row where I'm like genuinely enthralled and fascinated and want more, like 3 episodes, I'm hooked. You know, I'm hooked. I'm here for the long run. If you can't entertain me in 3 episodes, I'm over it. Like I'm done. But I got into it after 3 episodes and I thought it was so great, and I get like halfway through the show and it's just, after about the halfway point, it just turns to crap. It's just so bad. And like I'm like, well, I'm already like more than halfway through this show, like, and by the time I get to the point of where like robot mech girl is introduced, like I'm like 2 episodes away from like the finale. So it's like, why, like I'm here for the long haul, and like there's only 2 episodes left in the whole damn thing. Like I might as well finish it. You know? And like the other thing that was really annoying is they had these like obnoxiously edgy characters. Like there's a guy in there named Pain. His name is Pain. Like he's like a blonde-haired like Chad. Like his name is Pain. And he was such a loser. It was so funny to me. But yeah, and oh my god, it was so bad, you guys. And like I just wanted to kind of talk about it because the show just kind of affected me in this way where I was like, I have to talk about this. Like, I feel like I should probably talk more about like animes and shows that I watch and stuff like that, but it just blew my mind how the show started off so amazing and so good and entertaining, and then it just turned terrible. So like at the very end portion of it, it was just awful. And it was like they took something interesting and great and they just ruined it. They didn't even care at that point. Like, and I like, here's the thing is when it comes to like writing and like making a good show or, whatever, like if you want to like really immerse a person into a show. And like, here's the thing too, is because like there's this interesting fine line when it comes to writing stories that have characters that are quote unquote overpowered. So like, and there have been plenty of shows that have done it really well, and then there have been plenty of shows that do it really terribly. So like, the thing is that when you make a character that's overpowered, like, you need to still, have that reality check, which is super important. You need to be able to remind the person who's watching that, the person who's overpowered or whatever, it still has vulnerabilities. Like, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be able to be killed by whatever they're fighting. Sometimes it could mean that their vulnerabilities are maybe their emotional state or their mental state. Like, maybe it's the people they surround themselves. Like, for example, like I would say like Rise of the Shield Hero is a great example of that. That's a story about an overpowered character who has vulnerabilities, but his vulnerabilities are not based on his physical prowess or his ability to fight in a battle. His vulnerabilities are based on the people that he's constantly surrounded by and the social pressures of being the person that he is. And that gives stakes to a character that, is otherwise not able to be defeated in a fight or a battle. And that's really interesting. Another route to go about it is, if you are going to go the route of being so absurdly overpowered that it's ridiculous, then what you're going to want to do then is, if that's the route you want to go, you're going to want to go the route of like One Punch Man. Or another favorite of mine is, I think it's called like The Misfit of Demon King Academy. So like that goes the route of, we're not being serious. We're writing an overpowered character because it's funny and it's absurd and it's ridiculous and it's just pure entertainment value. And like, I personally am not a big fan of One Punch Man, but I can acknowledge the success of what it has done as a show to like have that level of absurdity within like an overpowered character, where it's like you can just purely enjoy like what he is because of how absurd and silly and fun it is. And that's also how I feel about the show The Misfit of Demon King High, or whatever it's called, where it's like the reincarnation of the demon lord or whatever, and he's just so broken, ridiculous, overpowered that it's hilarious and it's absurd, and you get wrapped up in the ridiculous antics of everything that he's doing, that you don't care that there's stakes or not. It's just fun and ridiculous. But the problem with the show that I watched, BOFURI, was they started out with this idea, like, yes, it was cute, yes, it was fun, like, yes, it was charming, sure, but they started out with the idea of, we have this character who's overpowered, but she has limitations. They immediately set in the mind of the viewer, there are limitations, there are things that she's not good at. We're writing the rules here, right? And we're making sure that the viewer is aware of what the rules are within this story. And like, so I'm like, okay, like, yeah, that's cool. Like, lock me in. Like, tell me your rules. Like, share with me the world that you're creating. Share with me the depth of the character that you're building, because clearly, yes, it's charming and silly and fun, but you're clearly creating depth for a character here. But then what happens is, as the show goes on, they violate that depth. They completely demolish it, and they're like, no, it's just absurdity and silliness and ridiculousness and strangeness and fun, and we don't care about our rules, and we don't care about like, the stakes or the depth of the character. It's just silly, fun ridiculousness. And it's like, You spent so much time building an interesting character, and then you, in the next portion of your story, you violate it for absurdity and silliness. It's either one or the other. You're either going to tell me the story of, Rise of the Shield Hero, or you're going to tell me the story of the Misfit at Demon King High. You don't get to have both, because when you start out with one and then suddenly throw the other one in, you're violating whatever you started with. And that takes all of the intrigue and the entertainment of what it originally was away. And that's the problem I had with BOFURI. Like, it really felt like that they started with something that was really good and interesting, and then they just totally violated it. And, like, I mean, if they had started with it being totally absurd and outrageous, and then continued that on all the way through, then I wouldn't think her turning into a giant Godzilla monster is out of question. I wouldn't think that her turning into a ridiculous, laser shooting mech woman would be ridiculous, That would fit in line with what they had already set up if it had began as being something absurd and ridiculous rather than something that has depth and intrigue. So that was just kind of on my mind. I was thinking really heavily about it, and I thought it was kind of entertaining. And like I said, I'm sorry that, I don't know if, I just kind of wanted to do a video that was a little different, and this was on my mind, and thought it'd be good content. I don't know. So let me know down in the comments below if you guys like this kind of stuff. I hope you do. I am going to end it off here. I feel like I've made most of my most important points. So go ahead and do all the wonderful things that I love so much, which is like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell. It really helps me out. It tells the algorithm that I matter, and I really appreciate that. Go ahead and check in the description below for all of my wonderful links, such as I now am doing more things on Twitter and Facebook. In fact, if you guys were on Twitter following me, you would know that I had watched BOFURI. I talked about it in Twitter a little bit, so clearly I'm making Twitter a bigger thing, and you can follow me on Facebook too. I don't like Facebook as much as I am currently liking Twitter, I guess. But also, I have some PayPal links down in the description below if you want to send me donations. That's greatly appreciated. I also have a Patreon page, which I am trying my best to do more things with, so please join the Patreon. And also, my Patreon members will have access to more exclusive content that will only be allowed on the Patreon. Because most of the content that I'm releasing just for Patreon might be a little more explicit that I can't share on YouTube, so I figure you guys would understand. So I'm going to go ahead and give a wonderful shout out to all of my wonderful Patreon members, and that would be Mr. Ya Boy Lettuce, Mr. Bo Falcon, the wonderful Mr. Fajouk, the wonderful Mr. James P., and the beautiful Miss Rebecca. Love all my Patreon members because they support me, they keep me afloat, they help me buy new equipment, they're just genuinely nice people who I chat with on a regular basis, and I highly encourage you guys to join the Patreon and join those wonderful members because, we're all just having a good time. And like I said, special content for Patreon coming up pretty soon. I'm working on it, I swear. Anyways, guys, other than that, thank you guys all so much for being here. All right? I'll see y'all later. I don't recommend BOFURI. I really don't recommend it. There's no reason for you guys to have to go out and watch it, so... I did that for you guys, and I gave you a review here, so don't even worry about it. Goodbye, guys. I'll hopefully make more content like this in the future, so let me know if you guys like it. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.